Are you moving to Aledo and you hate HOAs? Well, today, this video is for you. My name's Jared with Living in Aledo, and I recently have had kind of a string of clients reach out and really tell me that they wanted to move to Aledo and they did not want an HOA. And I realized this was a topic that I had neglected to educate you on. So today we're going to be talking about what you should be doing if you want to avoid HOAs in your move to Aledo, which is particularly of note because a vast majority of properties in the Aledo area fall under some level of HOA control, right? I mean, it's probably about 2/3 of properties that are going to come on the market are going to fall under an HOA. And so if that's something you're trying to avoid, this is going to be a helpful content for you, right? Now, I personally am not particularly anti-HOA, not particularly pro-HOA. I'm really just pro you understanding what you're getting into and you making the best decision for your family. With that being said, if you are planning a trip to Aledo in the near future, reach out to me. Before that, let's make sure we have a conversation so I can help you make the best decision for your family. Without further ado, let's hop into the video. Okay, so why would you want to avoid an HOA? First off, you're in Texas and you don't want to be told what to do. Sometimes that's enough to avoid an HOA. But honestly, some of the first things that people say they want to do is they want to build a shop. They don't want restrictions on it. They don't want to have to overpay for a brick veneer that they don't want. They don't want architectural review committees. They don't want their neighbors telling them what to do. They don't want the busybody trying to control what's going on. They want to be able to park their trailer at their house, right? Maybe they have an RV, maybe they have a camper, maybe it's a work trailer, maybe it's a work truck, and they don't want anybody complaining or causing a fuss about what they park and how they use their own property. Maybe you want to have chickens. Maybe you don't want to pay annual dues, right? You're trying to control your monthly carrying cost. You're moving to Texas and we have higher property taxes in a lot of states, and you don't want to add one more fee on top of everything else as you're moving here, right? You just don't want the HOA escalation, that whole process of people finding stuff to fight over. And maybe that's just what you don't want to deal with. You want to live in your home, you want to be left alone, and you don't want to be sticking your fingers in your neighbor's business either, right? So I'm going to give a balanced view here. I've found that a lot of people coming from outside of Texas are very averse to HOAs because in some states, California, HOAs are overly restrictive, they're super involved, they cause lots of problems, and people hate them. Most HOAs in Texas that I've experienced and dealt with, certainly in the Aledo area, are significantly more laid back than some HOAs in other states, right? There's still going to be guidelines, there's still going to be restrictions. And so you may still want to avoid them entirely, right? But just know that HOAs in Texas aren't typically the same. And before we get into any sort of list here, I do want to give maybe the flip side of what you're giving up. Okay, for those of you who were on the fence before starting this video, I just gave you all the positives of avoiding an HOA, but I do need to give you the negatives. What are you giving up if you do not have an HOA in your neighborhood? So just think about it like this. Anything that your dues would pay for in an HOA, you're giving that up in a neighborhood without an HOA. So there's no community pool, there's no amenity center, there's no landscaping standards. You're not getting a front gate entrance, or if there is one from when there was an HOA, you're not getting anybody paying for the upkeep, right? Maybe you have a voluntary HOA, but that's totally different. That's not really what we're talking about. You're giving up, no rule enforcement, no standards, no centralized architectural control committee. I've been in neighborhoods where, someone throws a swing set out in the front yard and it's like, okay, like why did we do that? The downside of no HOA is you're giving everyone freedom, which some people don't handle freedom very well, right? One negative is sometimes the resale value is better protected in a community that has some standards that are enforceable, but that is not always the case. That's something you can, visually kind of see when you come and you visit and you start taking a look around and driving these neighborhoods. So I would say that's going to be the negative, but we're going to transition into what you should actually be looking for if you're looking for a home without an HOA. Okay, well, let's move into some examples and what these properties might look like if you do not want an HOA. Now, I'm not going to give you a long running list of neighborhoods that are not in HOAs, but I really want to give you 3 conceptual ideas of property types that you can get without an HOA and a couple of specific examples of those different types. So let's hop into this short list with the conceptual idea of what you can be looking for if you do not want an HOA. Okay, so the first type of neighborhood that you could be considering if you do not want an HOA is really what I'm going to kind of reference as the more traditional neighborhood, right? These are going to be like in-town neighborhoods. In the Aledo area, at least, they're going to be probably like maybe the mid 80s or late 70s construction all the way up through maybe the early 2000s. Everything developed post 2012 almost exclusively as HOAs. So stuff that's a little bit older to fairly old. You're typically going to have larger lots than the new master plan communities. But what does that mean? Not an acre, right? We'll talk about larger properties in a minute, but most of these are going to be maybe a quarter acre to 0.75 acres. You're going to have traditional utilities. You're going to have city water, city sewer. You're more likely to have like fiber internet because you're closer to town. Like I said, you're going to be close to town because you have the utilities. So all that kind of goes together. Utilities goes with proximity to actual like city centers, whether that's Aledo, whether that's Willow Park, whether that's Hudson Oaks. A big chunk of Willow Park neighborhoods have no HOA. When you get to stuff that's more Aledo centric, it's some of the smaller neighborhoods pretty close don't have HOAs. One good example is Deer Creek. So if you're like, you want a little bit more space, but you're really not going for an acre plus, Deer Creek is great. Those lots typically range from like 0.3 up to a half or maybe 0.7 acres. You've got Stone Bluffs of Aledo, which is very close to Bearcat Park. Those lots are maybe 0.7-ish acres. That's really nice. You almost feel like you're on an acre, but you have city utilities, right? And then Crown Valley, which I'm going to talk about in another video because there's two parts of Crown Valley. But Crown Valley it's nice. It's a subdivision. It's residential. Something like that is going to be a great option as well. So your home sizes, they're probably going to be a little bit smaller on average. They're not going to be the average size of 3,200 square feet like these larger properties we'll talk about in a minute, but maybe the average size is 2,200 to 2,400 square feet. Because these were done in developments, right, a regular neighborhood, there's going to be a fairly uniform architectural style. There's going to be a relaxed feel. There's typically going to be more families, but you're going to have neighbors that you can interact with, you can see. And so they're going to be older though, right? So that's something that you need to think about. Hey, do I want an older property? Am I okay with an older property? Do I want a property that was built in the early 2000s, which a lot of people like to hate on because was a time when stuff sometimes wasn't built to the best standards. Whereas certain neighborhoods, maybe not the real small developments, like Deer Creek, you got homes that were built in the late 90s, early 2000s. They were built to kind of a pretty good structural standard at the time. So that's kind of the first type of property that we should be thinking about if you don't want an HOA, is kind of like the residential neighborhood. And next we're going to get into slightly larger properties. Okay, so the second type of neighborhood that you should consider if you do not want an HOA is actually the most common type of property that people are looking for when they call me and they say, hey, Jared, I want to buy an Aledo and I don't want an HOA. So this is going to be the most common thing that these people are in. You may be thinking of. These are going to be homes on 1 to 3 acres typically. I'm kind of calling these like acreage communities. So 1 to 3 acres. You're on a well and septic. You're going to have a lot of flexibility with your outbuildings, with your storage, what's visible from the street. You're going to have maybe some level of deed restrictions. The most common deed restrictions you're going to see is no mobile homes, no manufactured homes, and no swine. So it's like, as long as you're not trying to do pigs or a mobile home, which most of you aren't, you're going to be pretty flexible on these deed restrictions, right? Maybe not a whole lot of these areas on these types of neighborhoods still have lots. Some of them do, but that's going to be really what these people are looking for. They want to be able to throw shop up. They don't want to spend the extra money. They want to be just kind of like a metal shop. If they have an RV or if they have like trailers, they want to be able to park their trailer and not worry about exactly where it's set or if it's visible. And maybe they want chickens, right? My wife would love to have chickens. Our neighborhood doesn't allow it. Maybe, you want to have goats. You want to have a little doggy daycare. I have a client who does that. That little doggy daycare helps supplement her income in retirement. Those kinds of things can be done in these neighborhoods where you have a little bit of room to do this extra stuff, right? You have 1+ acres. In some of these neighborhoods, I'm going to give you a short list of neighborhoods that you should be considering. You've got Remuda Ranch, Tiara Ranch, Country Living, Oakview Estates. You have McDavid Southwest. Most of the McDavid neighborhoods have HOAs. McDavid Southwest does not. And then Maravilla Vistas, which I've mentioned in my HOA video because there's 2 Maravilla sections. There's Maravilla Vistas, which is the front section. Then there's Maravilla Estates, the back, which does have an HOA. So Maravilla Vistas is a great one to look at. It's a fairly uniform neighborhood that does not have an HOA. The reason for that is it was actually supposed to have an HOA and was never put in place. And so there is no HOA there. There are some level of deed restrictions. So some things to think about is the deed restrictions could have livestock restrictions, horses, cows, stuff like that. Some of them may not. So, but then you're going to be restricted to like, we need enough space to actually, have a large animal like that. But very few overall regulations. If you're looking for homes like this, on the very bottom end of this, you're probably looking at $600,000 or $700,000, going all the way up to maybe two-ish plus or minus on the top end of normal expectations. There's some, a good chunk that you can get between 8 and 900,000 and like 1.5. So that's going to be, if you're like, hey, I don't want HOA, I want flexibility, I'm okay with some variability, and I just don't want to be told what to do. But I also want to be in a neighborhood, in a development. I don't want to be out in the middle of nowhere, right? I want to have some type of neighbor. This is going to be a great fit for you. And if you're like, Jared, I actually don't want neighbors. I want my own little place where I don't see anybody else. This next section is going to be for you. All right, so the last type of property that we're going to lump in a kind of a large category are going to be these homes that are not just in unincorporated areas, right? Because a lot of neighborhoods in the little area are unincorporated, but these were never even like subdivisions that were developed. So they're not going to be in a named neighborhood, and there's obviously not going to be an HOA, but these are going to be, basically just parcels of land that were bought at some point by someone and a home was put on it, right? So these are going to be the absolute least restrictive, probably the least likely to have deed restrictions. And typically the lots on average might be a little bit larger than even the neighborhoods we just talked about. So maybe rather than 1 to 2 acres, maybe these are like 3 to 5 acres. And maybe one slight negative about these, even if this is exactly what you're looking for, right? You are looking for a piece of property, you can do whatever you want. The slight negative I might say about these type of properties is that oftentimes they're going to like have addresses that are on the major thoroughfares. So this might have like an FM5 address or an Oldanetta address. Because they weren't part of a development, there's not like a street that comes in off the major road and these homes are kind of tucked back away. These might be pieces of land that were off the major thoroughfares. So if the home sits close to that main road, that would be kind of a negative. But if you got 5 or 10 acres and it sits off in the back, that's great. So these types of properties I think are going to be, for a very specific buyer, probably looking at a $1 to $3 million range typically, because they're going to be larger parcels, and with that just comes kind of a base value that's there. But again, these are going to feel a lot more like the country, right? Maybe you're coming in off FM5. Maybe, you get to have your big entrance gate. You put your family name on that gate, and you've got 10 acres. You've got a long, 100-yard, driveway back to the house. These can be some really cool estates. And there's going to be some drawbacks, right? You're going to need to think about utilities. Obviously you're going to be well and septic, but even beyond that, okay, you're well and septic, that means you're going to be propane, but internet. That's going to be something where you probably are not going to have wired high-speed internet, like fiber internet. So you're going to be left with a smaller set of solutions. Honestly, Starlink's probably going to be your best bet. There are some what they call like direct line of sight providers. But I would probably say that unless you're along where AT&T has laid some new lines, it might still be kind of expensive to run it to your house. You could get it. I'm not saying you won't, but that's going to be an extra question to think about. And then since you're not really in a neighborhood, there's going to be no sidewalks, right? You're going to be a little bit further from your neighbors, right? So maybe you value that privacy. You kind of want your own little estate. You want your own set of little bit of paradise. That's what you're going to be looking for. If you're looking for close neighbors, lots of kids, structurally, this is just not going to work for you. So let's move into kind of wrapping this up and talk about, just as a reminder, who should be looking for neighborhoods with no HOAs. Okay, now who are these types of neighborhoods going to be a great fit for? And really there's a variety of individuals who might prefer to not have an HOA. And that's going to range from everything to the family that wants to kind of do a little bit of their urban homestead, right? Aledo's not urban, but you have like your little homestead. So maybe you have some chickens, maybe goats, something like that. Maybe you are a business owner and you have trailers or excess large vehicles, like commercial type vehicles you want to be able to park on your property. property. Maybe that's you have a big RV and you don't want to pay, storage facility fees to keep your RV somewhere off site. You want to keep it on your property. Maybe you want a large shop, right? And you don't want to spend all the extra money that's going to require to put, a shingle roof and a brick veneer on it. Maybe you want to just be able to throw up a metal shop. Or maybe you're like a business owner and you want to be able to like repair vehicles on your property, right? So you're going to throw up a metal shop in the back and maybe you repair vehicles here and there. Maybe you're like, I don't really care about having any neighborhood amenities. I don't want a neighborhood pool. I want to have my own pool. And really, maybe you prefer, your privacy over uniformity, right? Maybe you want to get a little bit more space. Or at the end of the day, maybe you just don't want anybody telling you what to do. There's a variety of reasons why you may prefer to not have an HOA, and none of those reasons are wrong. You just need to make sure you're comfortable with the fact if you're in an area where you can do whatever you want, you're going to realize that your neighbors can kind of do the same thing, and maybe you don't like that. So now let's get to why you might actually prefer to be in an HOA. Okay, well, let's wrap this up with who should probably stay in an HOA. And I'd say that there's going to be a significant portion of individuals who would prefer to stay in an HOA. And that might be you if you don't want any sort of livestock or poultry animals allowed in the neighborhood, right? Whether that's chickens, goats, horses on the extreme example. Like I said, I'll have another video about how to locate horse properties in the area. Certainly, pigs or anything else like that. If you don't want to be driving into your neighborhood and you have neighbors who have large RVs parked in front of their home on their driveway, if you don't want metal shops visible, right? And again, most HOAs will let you build a shop, but it has to look like your home. So if you want to avoid those, then go to an HOA. Or if you specifically want to make sure that there's like amenities, right? If you want there to be pools or workout facilities, amenities can vary significantly between, on the acreage type neighborhoods of HOAs or the master plan community. So if you want amenities or if you want planned neighborhood events, that's going to be that. If you prefer minimal variability, right? If you want the neighborhood to look more uniform in structure, style, size, then you should probably stick to an HOA. So those are going to be the people who avoid non-HOAs. Therefore, should be focusing and be okay with neighborhoods that have HOAs. Okay, now that you've watched the whole video, give me your thoughts on HOAs in the description below. And if this is your first time on the channel, hit that subscribe button. And if you're thinking about moving to Aledo, go ahead and reach out to me, call, text, email, whatever works best for you. Let's get a conversation started, especially as we are moving into the busy season of real estate. If you have a trip planned, let's get you on the calendar. Let me help you make a great decision for your family. Look forward to chatting.